We know Beth is a sucker for a great acronym. Today, Gabz, Beth, and I share our favorite ones that we consistently teach to the teams we are on. Today is the acronym episode.
Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have created and are dedicated to this podcast because we believe that staff training is one of, if not the most important part of your job as a camp director. Staff training is what prepares your staff to care for their kids, to feel confident in their skills, to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and to learn along the way. A well thought out and intentional staff training will help you in more ways than you can imagine. And we need to help each other bring our very best. Welcome to our episode, and let's begin with sharing who we are. Ruby.
I'm Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer of Ruby Outdoors and a friend and trainer to camps all across the world. And my home base is in Western North Carolina in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Thanks, Ruby. Gabz.
And my name is Gabrielle Raill. I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Woro. Camp Woro is an all-girls camp, and we're situated in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada. And we work on creating a positive community for girls and women.
Thanks, Gab. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. I was a camp director for many years, but now I have the privilege to serve as a camp consultant. And my true focus is intentional leadership training. So this was likely the hardest episode for me personally to prepare for. Ruby, in all of her wisdom, decided we would choose our top 3 acronyms or mnemonics to share with you today. And as she's a wee bit younger than I am not sure she truly understood that I began directing and therefore creating acronyms and other ways for my staff to remember things over 25 years ago. So trying to narrow those down to 3 was downright impossible for me, but I have done my best. Acronyms are a great way for folks to remember things they need to learn and then to be able to recall them flawlessly in times of stress or worry or need. They're also, for me, a great way to add to the lexicon of your camp to make you unique and to help your people understand what's important to you and your purpose. So here we go. And if you want all my others from the last 26 years, as Gab says often, you're going to have to wait for the book to come out. So Ruby, as you chose this great topic, let's start off with you.
All right, so my number one acronym that is such a game changer is my acronym for conflict resolution. And for a long time, I taught VOMP, and I'm not even going to tell you what that is because I'm moving away from it. That's one that's been in the outdoor education, adventure education field for a while. But in the last couple of years, I was introduced to nonviolent communication, that whole system from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. And so his 4 steps, it's not a really pretty acronym, but I don't know if you watch The Handmaid's Tale, it's easy to remember. It's OFNR, OFNR. And it's the words are observations, feelings, needs, requests. And so the way I teach this to folks that I'm doing conflict resolution with is I share with them about how, conflict is awkward. A lot of us avoid it. And a lot of times we avoid it because we don't know how to handle it and don't know how to sit in those feelings. And so I'm going to give you a roadmap for how that conversation can go. And what I love about this system is that it can work for so many different types of conversations, be that like, I have something on my mind that you're doing that's frustrating me and I want to talk to you about it, or you're doing this thing and you probably don't know it, but I don't want to lose our friendship, right? So this is great not only in a professional setting, but I use this all the time in my personal life as well. So here is a quick breakdown. So O is observations. So just stating simply what's going on here. I like to use the example, the staff lounge is a mess, right? So instead of being like, you're a dirty slob, no, I say, making an observation, it's pretty objective. The staff lounge is a mess. Feelings is the F. So that's where you use those I think, I feel statements that we as camp people are very adept at using. So I think that we need to spend a little time cleaning the staff lounge, or I think that folks may not be taking personal responsibility and cleaning up after themselves. That's what I'm feeling like is happening here. Okay, so observations, feelings. N is needs. And so this is where we're asking the question and trying to answer the question, what do we need here? So for instance, with the staff lounge example, I think about one of the reasons that staff lounges get gross is because there's just not designated time to clean it, right? The time that it gets cleaned is at the end of the session. And nobody wants to do that in their free time because they're a place to hang out, right? So no one wants to clean. So we need to build some time into our schedule each day or at the end of your break period or whatever to clean the staff lounge, right? So then R is requests. And that is where, now that we've gone through our observations, we've shared those, and we even want to do some good techniques of I share my observations, you repeat those back to me, you share your observations, I repeat them back to you, I share my feelings, you know, we do that whole exchange, we share needs. And then we get to the last part, which is making a request. And in other conflict resolution systems, a lot of times this is like where you make a plan. And so that, yeah, that's happening here too. But what I really love is the opt-in feature of making a request. You're asking for the folks that are having this conversation, like, can you do this? Is this something you're willing to do? Which I think is really important. It's not just saying, all right, gung ho, we're all going forward with this thing. Like we are actually putting it in the framework of, I'm making a request of you. Is that something you can do? What requests do you have of me? And it's a really nice exchange. So O, F, and R, observations, feelings, needs, requests. And if you want to read more about that, there's a great book by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg called something, nonviolent communication. If you Google those words, you will find his stuff.
Thanks, Ruby. Great way to start us off. All right, Gabz, what have you got?
One of my favorites is SAS. So SAS is something that we teach our staff members about with camper behavior management. And sometimes, you know, you want obviously your staff members to approach your kids kindly. You want them to be rational. You know, there's all of these things and needs that we want. But what about an emergency situation? And how do you explain to staff members how to adjust their behavior according to the different situations? So SAS stands for stop what you're doing, approach appropriately, and speak kindly. And that's for every single situation or scenario at camp. So stop what you're doing is straight from Michael Brandwein. When you're addressing behavior, you don't want to keep doing what you're doing and sort of just talk over your shoulder and say, hey kid, can you X, Y, and Z? No, you stop and then you approach appropriately. So if there's two kids that are speaking, let's just say during an activity when a counselor is giving instructions and there's two kids that are speaking, you don't want to embarrass them, but so you might want to approach appropriately in sort of a calm and not draw attention, quiet way, and sort of sit beside them or stand beside them. So they'll feel their presence instead of rushing towards them, and then they might, be embarrassed, or it's an unnecessary approach. But if there's an emergency, you would want to move very, very quickly. So stop what you're doing, approach appropriately, and then speak kindly. So no matter what the scenario, you're being respectful to the child or to the other staff member. And for me, this has really, really helped in also after behavior management is done by staff members, when we are providing feedback to that staff member, we can go over SAS and see like what were the steps that were taken and was there anything that they could have done differently or better. So so for me, it's simple, it's easy, and my staff loves saying like, I really sassed that kid, or you sassed that kid, meaning you're respectful, and hopefully it's also didn't draw attention to that child from other campers.
Thanks, Gab. And you can see the great use of acronyms, and often they come about in a way to solve a problem. So in a way
Right.
to create framework, in a way to help people remember. There are lots of other uses for them too. And so what I want to talk about, well, I guess it's the same thing. I did see a need and tried to come up with a framework, but it was a much bigger project. So I was asked to create a program for a week of teen camp programming that I did a few years back. And the directors and the staff were trying to find a way to help campers have great discussions on important topics, to learn the value and joy of treating each other with kindness, and to make really good decisions all on their own. So I had 5 full days plus half days on either end to work with these teens, and they were 13 to 16 years old. And I developed a 5-word acronym that could help campers and staff focus their efforts on becoming the person that they wanted to be. So the acronym is STAND. And each day it was filled with an hour's worth of activities that we all did together as a whole camp, first thing after breakfast. So there were small group discussions, adventure programming activities, games, songs, PowerPoint presentations, the whole gamut. And they did many of the activities in their cabin groups, but we also purposely combined them with new cabin groups each day to get to know more people better. And it was truthfully one of the most impactful weeks I've ever had as a camp professional, as I saw firsthand the intelligence and the willingness and the determination of this group of campers to make the world a better place for everyone. And all the lessons of the day were reinforced throughout the daily schedule with songs, with fun announcements, with scripture, with vespers at the end of campfire, all those things to tie it all together. So many of those campers went on to become LITs and staff, and some of them are still on staff today. So STAND stands for, S is social graces, if you please. So that's where we worked on holding open doors or introducing ourselves, shaking hands with everybody at the lunch table every single day, which was really awkward on days 1 and 2, but got much better as things went on. We talked about welcoming folks into a group when they arrived on a scene and you were already in discussion. We talked about cell phone etiquette for when they went home, all these kinds of things. T is take responsibility for your own actions. So we discussed what it would look like when folks didn't do this and what the world could look like if we all did. And they had some great responses for that. Our day of A was Ask Intelligent Questions, where we discussed not taking everything we hear and read at face value, but rather questioning and looking up sources and doing our research and helping us to affirm our beliefs. And never miss an opportunity to be kind, which we practiced not only in that hour, but throughout that entire day. And it was one of my favorite days at camp ever. And D is do all things with integrity, where we discussed what that means and how hard that can be and how we can lean on one another for support. We concluded the week with an online live program where campers not only shared their gifts and talents, like in a coffee house, but they also explained between acts what the STAND program meant to them and how it helped them grow. They were a remarkable group of people who made me very proud. And to this day, some of them still send messages about how they live their lives now, knowing what they stand for. So don't just let acronyms be limited to immediate needs of a camp. They can be for everything. One of the reasons I'm such a big fan. And now, before we move on to round 2, we have an ad from one of our sponsors.
Hey listeners, today I want to share with you briefly about a free service that Go Camp Pro offers. Sometimes it can feel like there is too much to read and too little time, especially when trying to stay up to date on what is going on in our ever-changing world. Simply put, there's not enough time to read it all. And I hate feeling like I'm going to miss out on smart ideas from thought leaders in the industry. To help with information overload, a volunteer editorial board at Go Camp Pro scans the best of what is shared in the COVID-19 and Camp Slack, the Summer Camp Professionals group, and a variety of resources shared from anywhere from the local to the international level. This info is gathered into an easy-to-read newsletter called The Brief. Each newsletter contains a short summary of the current top 5 COVID-19 stories, and content is highly curated to reveal its relevancy to the summer camp industry. Find links to upcoming webinars, podcasts, articles to share with families and staff, monthly reflections, and updated guidance from experts around the world, all in the brief. You can sign up to receive the brief at the link in our show notes.
And we're back, and we're going to go back to Ruby for her second acronym of the show.
This is an acronym for you, camp directors, and also maybe to share with your leadership team members. I, over the last couple of years, have been doing a lot of workshops about delegation, that is teaching workshops about delegation, how to do it better. And if that's something you want to hear more about, be in touch. I'm happy to go over some of that with you. But I want to give you the first half of the acronym that I always give when I think through anytime I'm delegating a task. So anytime I'm letting go of something, and I don't like for people to think about delegating as letting go, but more about you're managing it a little bit differently. And so these are the 4 things we need to say every single time we delegate a task. And so the acronym is OZAP, OZAP. I know, catchy, right? But mine are not as good as Beth's. I'm still learning. But, so OZAP. So the first thing that we want to share anytime that we are delegating something is to share the objective. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish? I'm going to go back to the staff lounge. So the objective is that we need to clean the staff lounge, and we have 20 minutes to do it because the health inspector's on the way. All right. So that objective, clearly state what is the goal. Z is zoom out. We need to pull back and take a quick look at where does this fit into the big picture. We need to clean it because the last time we had 7 points taken off just within the staff lounge, and we cannot have that happen again. So take a step back and give them some context. All right. So objective, zoom out. A is authority. So what can this person do, and kind of what is the box that they are operating within, right? So yes, we need to use the cleaners that are available in the